Hey, welcome to the second edition of the Coffee MBA webinar series. We hope to start doing this more frequently and bringing as much business insight and business experts to the coffee industry as possible. And I'm Heather Kelly. I'm one of the co-CEOs of the Coffee MBA. I'm based in Portland, Oregon. And you guys probably all know our favorite person, Miranda Caldwell, over over in Berlin. Yay. Miranda's letting people in, so I'm taking charge of the first part of this. Um, and we have the amazing Niko Philosophos today here with us to share all about the key metrics for success in the coffee shop. Niko is the VP of Sales for Dripos. And if you don't know what Dripos is now, you'll know by the end of this webinar for sure. Niko is based in Austin, Texas, but is a Wisconsinite originally, and spent his entire career in food tech, essentially, and now at Dripos, which is even more narrow in the coffee space of tech. So really exciting to have Niko. I've been able to do a couple of events with Niko now, and his team is great. He's great. And we're just so delighted to have Niko here sharing his knowledge with us. So I think without further ado, Niko, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like, all right. So yeah, Heather, thanks for the lovely introduction, and thank you both to Heather and Miranda for putting this together. I'm super excited to be involved, especially at such an early stage for what you guys are doing at Coffee MBA. Really excited to see what that turns into, and happy to be here. So today I'm kind of going to be going over the key metrics for a coffee shop. We'll talk about kind of what those are and kind of get into some of the details in this conversation. Looking at kind of what we're going to cover here, as I mentioned, we'll talk about the metrics and kind of the principles behind what those metrics are, things you're going to want to focus on. We'll kind of look at benchmarks within the industry as to where we want to fall in line with these metrics. I've put together like kind of a couple examples that we'll be able to look at and play with some numbers on, just to kind of get some real life numbers in our minds and understanding kind of how this all plays together. And then, talking about, as we look at these three metrics, like it's really important that we understand how we're going to track them. So that's obviously a big portion of all of this. And then in closing, like, we'll definitely cover some ways in which, we can all do some things on the side, like outside of being like behind the bar in the coffee shop, to really boost sales and increase customer retention. Before we get into that, Heather did give you guys a nice little bio on myself. As she mentioned, I am the VP of Sales at Dripos. While sales, that being in the title really makes you think I just do a lot of selling. Kind of on the contrary, we're a startup team. We've kind of been doing this for building the product for about 4 years now. And along that time, I've spent a lot of time really doing like product management, like kind of meeting with operators all over the country, finding out what they use software for and how they're using software, kind of working with our internal teams on engineering to bring some of those functionalities and realities into our product. And then just like kind of deploying that into the real marketplace and seeing how our customers are appreciating some of those new features. As far as coffee is concerned, I like my coffee black. I am a go-to drip coffee drinker when the weather's right. But as Heather mentioned, I do live in Austin, Texas, and it is hot, I would say 75% of the year. So I lean towards an iced Americano or perhaps a cold brew during those times. But I do love it here in Austin. And today I had some drip coffee because it was a little chilly this morning. So when we talk about these three key metrics, I'd love to see maybe just some communication in the chat here on maybe what we think these three core metrics are going to be. So I'll give a pause for a moment just to see if anybody wants to throw some guesses out there. But again, these are just going to be, driving metrics for the business, things that we want to pay attention to, things that we can pull data from and make real-time business insights. I'm seeing cost of goods thrown in there from Kevin. Kevin, thanks for the participation. Do we have any other brave souls? Margin. Andre, good point. Sales, absolutely. Labor costs, bingo. Bingo. So, three core metrics: sales, labor cost, and COGS, which is really an acronym, stands for cost of goods sold. So kind of getting into these three individually, talking about the principles behind them. With regards to sales, it's really important to be able to have various revenue streams for the business. Nowadays, customers are sort of expecting the availability to order from their preferred platform. So whether that's being, in the store, ordering directly from the cafe, the cashier, or kind of placing that order online, having access to that order on their smartphone, whether that be in the way of a mobile app or just through your online website. It's really important to be able to offer those different platforms to your customers, because certain customers are going to be looking for things like that. Now, if you are going to be offering, online ordering and app ordering, it's really important to have your menu management down. Now, when we talk about menu management, it's really important to think about pricing along with consistency and inventory. Specifically as this relates to online ordering, if a customer is ordering online, you want that experience to be as close as possible to what it is like if they're ordering from the cashier. So what that means is, if a customer orders like something from your baked category, like a blueberry muffin or something like that, you want to make sure that when they do show up to pick up their order, that you can fulfill that order and you do have one of those items in stock. So with regards to inventory, that's super important. When it comes to online ordering, we almost have like one chance to mess it up with the customers. So it's important that we can nail this right out of the gate. Understanding the data behind sales is incredibly important, because this is the driver that's going to kind of like control the following metrics with labor cost and cost of goods sold. So it's really important to have a full picture of where all your sales are coming from, whether that's coming from like in-store in the point of sale, or online ordering, or kiosk ordering, or whatever platforms you have available. You want to have a full picture of what your sales looks like on a daily, hourly, monthly, annual basis, etc. Looking at labor costs, as we think about labor costs, it's really more so thought of as like a percentage. It's kind of the amount you are going to be paying your staff as it compares to sales. So typically this is calculated on a daily or even like an hourly basis. Now, the calculation is going to be like your total labor cost divided by your total sales, and you're going to multiply that by 100 just to get a nice percentage number that you can kind of work with and make, insights from. Things to note on this is, it's similar to sales in a sense that you want to be able to make real-time insights from this data, and you're able to take those insights and really make like operational changes in the moment. Now, something to consider when you're thinking about labor cost is like salaried employees, whether that's yourself or, cafe managers, and how you're incorporating that into the data. So you want to have a system that can control all of this and spit out information for you to I think the real-time insights part here is what's most important. And we'll kind of get into that as we look at some examples later on. Cost of goods sold, as formerly mentioned as COGS. This is, again, we're talking about the three core metrics. So they're all super, super important to the business here, and understanding menu profitability. This is going to be a big driver. So it's the amount of a product costs to produce compared to how much you're actually selling it for. If we look at this image here of this to-go coffee cup, you're going to want to consider not only the product inside the cup, but all of the elements that make up this cup that you're handing to the customer, right? The cup, the sleeve, the lid, all of that is considered along with, what's used to produce the coffee, to understand what the cost of this cup of coffee is versus how much you're selling it for. So when you're thinking about tracking these things, you want to be able to track your vendors, your products, and unit costs. Ideally, you would be able to have a system that you can build out your recipes for all of your menu items, and then you would have an understanding of what that menu item costs you to produce. And then obviously you have your sales price, so you understand what you're selling it for, which is going to give you a clear picture on what your cost of selling that good is. Now, important concepts to think about when you're thinking about COGS. There's a thing about theoretical inventory as it's compared to actual inventory. Theoretical inventory is basically like, we've sold this amount of goods. This is what we should have left in inventory. But actual inventory accounts for waste, spillage, employees making shipped drinks, et cetera. And having an understanding of, what theoretically we should have versus what we actually have is going to help you determine your efficiency on kind of reordering and pars and things of that nature. Now, if you can have a system that can control all of these variables and spit out, again, real-time data insights for you, that's going to be where your bread is buttered. And so finding something that can do that for your business is going to take you to the next level as we're thinking about like menu profitability. Now, as we've talked about these three metrics, right? We have sales, we have labor cost, and we have cost of goods sold. We want to think about what are the benchmarks for this. What do we want to aim for when it comes to these data points? Now, sales, obviously the higher the better, right? But this is really going to be dependent on, your market, your customers, your competition in your area. This is not something that you can have a target number for. But this, again, what's important to note is that like this number dictates, the following: labor cost as well as cost of goods sold. So being dialed in on that sales data is going to be super important, and it's going to help you make decisions that are going to impact the bottom line. Looking at labor cost, it's a goal, right, for a business to be within 25 to 35%. So this is going to be your total cost over your total sales, and understanding what that percentage is. We'll get into some examples on what this looks like and how we can use these data points to make decisions with our team. If we're looking at cost of goods sold, again, this is kind of a benchmark in the industry. We want to aim for about 20 to 30%. And so this is, as we're thinking about, menu pricing and kind of what we're buying our products for versus what we're selling them for, this is sort of a threshold that we want to lie within. Looking at some samples here to better understanding what this does. So in this sample, we basically have a daily sales total of $1,500 in total sales. We've got a labor cost of $375, and we have a cost of goods sold for that day at $450. Now, if we just kind of do our quick calculations on all of these numbers, that's going to spit out like on labor costs, we're at 25%. That's a great day. We should be happy with how we scheduled that team versus the actual volume we saw that day. The staff is likely going to be busy throughout the entire day. Maybe there's low points here and there, but for the most part, that's the metric we want to look at is what is the percentage overall. Now, as we look at like cost of goods sold, right? $450 in the costs that we sold, right, in terms of product versus the $1,500 we brought in, that's going to lie us within a 30% margin here, which based on our benchmarks, this is a great day in terms of profitability for the business. On the other side of the coin, right, you have times throughout the day, or there's signs that you can take into consideration that say, oh, maybe I'm overscheduled. Maybe, I put too much on staff today. Maybe it's weather, right? Maybe it's rainy and people just aren't coming into the shop that day. And it's important to be able to pull this data, like we talked about earlier, on a daily or even hourly basis. As you can see here, if we have an hourly sales total of $392, but our labor cost is $176, our labor to sales ratio is around 45% at that margin there, which, based on our benchmarks that we've talked about, right, we are well overstaffed for this hour of work here. And again, there are a lot of things to think about, when you're seeing data like this. Is it just an oddly slow period throughout the day? Is the weather just like, is there a 30-minute bad period of weather throughout the day? We can kind of take in real life insights and play them into, put them into consideration here. But if we're at a 45% hourly labor to sales ratio, we want to make a change. Maybe you got to cut someone, send them home for the day, or maybe just going forward, you need to start thinking about different things as you're scheduling people out. Maybe there was like an event in town that you just didn't consider at the time, and therefore people didn't show up. Or on the other side of the coin, maybe they did and you were understaffed, right? And so these are things to start thinking about. And having this data, being able to make inferences in real time is where the value lies. So if we're thinking about like, how do we track all of these things? On the labor side, having a proper scheduling tool is going to play a huge part. The ability to build out your roles and have pay rates associated to those roles, and then building out a schedule entirely, right? And then you have your schedule for the week that shows you on each day, like what your labor cost is going to be for that day. So that's imperative to have, especially as a team grows and maybe you have multiple locations. Like, it can be a lot to handle trying to do this, by hand or perhaps in Google Sheets. You'd be surprised about how many operators are still using Google Sheets to kind of get by with things like this. So if that's you, you're not alone in that sense, but there are better tools out there for you. When we think about cost of goods sold, and we talk about sort of like, the recipe building functionality, you want to be able to build this out within your menu building tool if possible, because that's going to, again, give you like real-time data. So having the ability to kind of manage your ingredients and build recipes and tie all of those, ingredients and recipes into products, and understanding the cost of that product is going to be a super valuable tool. Now, all of this kind of relates to reporting, right? So having the ability to kind of pull all of this out in reporting tools, and having that full picture of the business through those reporting tools is going to be really important. So looking at things like sales summaries to understanding your sales that the location is pulling in. And again, having that full picture on the sales summary is where the good data lies. And so it's not just looking at, your in-store sales, it's having something that's pulling in, all of the total sales coming from wherever your business is able to, accept transactions. Another report is, that labor versus sales. Again, obviously we're relating this back to sales, as we know, but the ability to pull this data on a daily basis, even, and filter that down to an hourly basis, is how you're going to be able to make decisions on shift change, on, whether you need 2 baristas or 1 barista for morning shift versus evening shift, and better understanding that. And even on a daily basis, looking at what, Friday's volume looks like versus Saturday's volume, and comparing that week over week, right? So having all of that insight is super important. And then, the cost of goods sold. If you have a system that can build out your recipes within and understand, the price on those products that you're selling to customers along with the sales price, it's going to make, menu profitability a lifetime easier. Otherwise, it's a mess of APIs or Google spreadsheets, again, that you're using to track this data with. And in that case, most of that data is not going to be real time. So you're going to be making decisions kind of in like based on historical data, not based on what's happening in the moment. So as we're thinking about sales and that being like the granddaddy of them all in terms of metrics, we want to think about how can we drive sales, right? So kind of three availabilities here to leverage are going to be social media, marketing, and loyalty. So as we're looking at social media, right, we want to be engaging with our customers. There's opportunities to do so with, latte art, customer reviews, new product launches, or even promotions that you're running within the cafe. Getting that information out to your customer, getting your name in front of, your customer audience on a more frequent basis is always a good idea. And doing so through platforms that your customers are on is going to be the easiest way to do so. So thinking about like, Instagram, doing Instagram stories with your baristas who are pouring latte art, that's going to kind of like encourage your customers to even just like take a picture of their drink and put it on their story. And now now your product is in front of their audience, right? So you have a multiplier effect with things like that. As we think about marketing for the business, if you have a system that's going to enable you to use marketing tools, you can put together campaigns via text or email. I think this is a great opportunity, again, to get your name in front of your current customers and try to, whether it's upsell them or just get them in more often or even reward them for being customers, right? I think this is a great opportunity to do so. And that kind of circles to loyalty, right? Having a loyalty system that is competitive in the market, that encourages your customers to be loyal customers. It's always better to keep a customer than go find a new one, a lot of people say. So this is a great way to do that. Putting together something that, incentivizes customers to come back. It incentivizes them to try new products. And therefore, you're just going to create that loyal customer base when, your customer is asked by a friend, you want to go get some coffee? They're going to name drop your location. This is where I want to go. And maybe they're bringing a friend who hasn't been there before. Now, kind of rounding all of this out, right? We've talked about a lot of different ways in which we want to understand data. I think a great kind of quote is like that I use in some of my own like side projects in life is like the tool makes the job, right? Like if you have the right tool in place, getting these insights, making these decisions, building these campaigns becomes easy. And this is kind of what we've been building for the last 4 years at Dripos, is sort of a system that has all of this data in one place for operators to make real-time decisions, and having that product not, break the bank. What we've kind of found is that a lot of times operators choose not to do, marketing campaigns or loyalty campaigns or manage inventory because that's an additional fee within some of these other tools, or because they need to go find an additional tool and then now they have data existing in different databases. So enter Dripos, right? Kind of one tool, one data set. This allows you to not rely on spreadsheets and not rely on APIs. This gives you the opportunity to make real-time decisions for your business. We've built in tools for labor versus sales forecasting. So this is going to take predictive sales data and look at your scheduled labor to give you an understanding of what your forecasted labor versus sales percentage is, right? So again, now we're making, even before real time, we're preparing for what to expect based on the data. if you're looking at ingredients and inventory, we're putting the finishing touches on our cost of goods functionality. And this is a huge feature that we'll be releasing that there's not really another point of sale in this space that has this within their native product. So if this is a tool you're interested in and you're using a different system, right, you're going to be connecting APIs and just dealing with another product. And now you have data existing in two different databases, which we've kind of talked about as a potential problem to understand and make real-time decisions. Looking at marketing, loyalty, and promos, just ways to drive sales, right? We have tools that will help with that. All of these functionalities are within Dripos, and they're not, it's not a modular system where you have to pay for all these other add-ons. So all in all, I mean, Dripos is a system that's really built for the coffee workflow and the coffee business. And we've been doing that now for about 3 years. And it's been a lot of fun for us on our side because we've built a product that, an industry feels they've been underserved from the tech standpoint. An industry that's kind of been forced to use a lot of the leftover software tools that were built for restaurants or other retail environments and just finding ways to make it work for their coffee shop. So no longer is that the case with a system like Dripos in your business. You're able to use it for what it is, and it's really built for the coffee shop or the cafe. So kind of in closing here, I've got a link up here if you're interested in learning more about what we do or kind of seeing more about our product. You can scan this. There's a quick survey just to fill out, and someone from our team will reach out to you, and we'll be in touch for an opportunity to chat and learn more about your business and see if maybe if there is an opportunity for us to kind of work together and help solve problems for the business. So that's my bit on the core metrics for a coffee shop or a cafe. I hope you guys did find it to be insightful and valuable. And again, if you're interested in learning more, like directly as it relates to Dripos, I'd love to see you guys fill out this form and have a continued conversation with someone from our team. But it looks like there's some questions in the chat that we've got time to address.
Yes, thank you so much, Niko. I really appreciate you being here. We have a ton of great questions. So let's start with the first. Does having food or not having food change labor metrics?
I mean, so restaurants, they do have a higher cost of labor. Traditional restaurants do. They're going to have a larger staff that's kind of manning that entire kitchen. That's why I think the range that we've provided here, I can stop sharing my screen, I guess. That's kind of why I think the range that we provided in this kind of, benchmarking system is a decently sized range where it's kind of 25 to 35%. If you're going to have a fairly robust, staff within the kitchen, you're obviously going to have a higher labor to sales ratio. But I think it's really dependent on what that's going to look like within your business.
Thank you. Next question. Can you talk a little bit about the floor for labor costs, the minimum amount of labor you need to have regardless of sales, and how a high labor cost may be indicative of a sales issue, not a labor issue? Does that make sense?
Yeah, let me just read it because that was.
Yeah. So like you got to have labor.
Yep.
But maybe your sales are too low to even, and that's throwing off your percentage.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of dependent, right? I don't know if to my knowledge, like what the floor might really be with saying like, okay, we don't have enough sales at all to kind of like have labor. I mean, that's kind of like, are you making any money to kind of support the business on a monthly basis, right? You do have fixed costs for the business, right? With overhead and utilities and rent, those are going to be considered fixed costs. So I would think about like the floor of sales is like, can we cover those to continue progressing the business forward? So I would think about that not directly as it relates to my sales to labor ratio, more so as like, can I continue to keep this business moving in the right direction? Or is there a serious red flag that I need to pay attention to here?
Like a P&L issue kind of.
Yeah.
Can you define API?
I that's a what does it stand for? It's definitely an acronym, and I should definitely know this. But it's application programming interfacing. So basically, you're going to have one program, right? Whether it's your point of sale product, and then you're going to have another software tool, right? Whether it's your scheduling product. They have their own databases, right? So they're not communicating with one another at this time. What you can do is you can kind of connect, an API that's going to bring the data from your scheduling tool into the data set within your point of sale product. Now, the reason why this is not an ideal scenario is because that's not happening in real time, right? And kind of throughout this discussion, we've kind of talked about the benefits of being able to make these decisions in real time. And so if you are going to be relying on APIs, you're relying on that sync happening at all times. Additionally, you're relying on that sync being consistent, accurate, and there not being any issues within that build, right? So yes, it can definitely help the business. Like, you want to be able to make these insights, but the ability to make them in real time is where the value is built for sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this person says, I am mostly focused on coffee roasting, but also opening up a coffee shop soon. I am currently setting up my website with WooCommerce that integrates with all of our sites / POS. It's another version of Shopify, except it integrates very well with WooCommerce. Can I still implement Dripos with my website on WooCommerce using all of our sites?
So Dripos at its core is kind of like a point of sale solution. So that's kind of the entry point to working with us, is using us as, the point of sale solution within your cafe. Kind of going beyond that, there's a plethora of tools that we do have built out for the workflows of a coffee shop that you can tap into. But if Dripos is not going to be used as the point of sale in that location, then that's kind of like the entry point to working with us, is using us as that product. Now we do work with a lot of businesses that have, e-commerce running, and maybe they're doing that through Shopify or sort of a competitive product to Shopify. We work with tons of businesses that do that. In that scenario, on your website, you'd have, like you'd have your branded website, you'd have like an e-commerce drop down that might link to Shopify, and then like an order now link down that might pull people to, the Dripos ordering website. And you can do that with obviously other platforms as well. But within our system, like, using us as the point of sale product is sort of the entry point to all the other tools and functionalities that we have.
Since we're talking about it, not to cut in line, but I'm wondering what you're looking to do in the future in terms of like, is there any interest in expanding beyond POS and that kind of thing? Or what are the things you're hoping to do with Dripos going forward?
Yeah, I think, it's just, we're kind of at like this point where we're getting a lot of interest from cafes all over the country. We've developed some amazing relationships with a lot of operators, and we're seeing that this is like an opportunity for us to just like, all we have to do is like build the best system for a coffee shop, and like we'll continue to grow at a very healthy rate. And so it's been pretty fun for us to like onboard new customers that come up with really cool new features that we're able to build into the product. And then those operators like have those features that they, kind of came up with that are available to them. And they're also now available to sort of like all of our user base. There's a lot of really cool things that we can do in the future, as we think about different partnerships or different dashboards or ordering platforms within our system. So if you were thinking about like a long-term picture, there's an area where maybe there's like a marketplace within our dashboard where operators can go on and like place orders for like reordering ingredients or inventory, and that all communicating with your stock that's available in your point of sale, and all of that relating to like your unit price for that item, which then spits out your cost of goods sold for that item, which then can give you a report for like menu profitability, and kind of like seeing that whole pattern move. Just being like super focused in the coffee industry gives us opportunities to like further ingrain ourselves with other businesses that are also focused on the coffee industry. And so finding those opportunities with, different partners in the space is pretty exciting. Like thinking about, there's a lot of new tools that are like really expanding with automation in the space, and maybe there's a way that we can kind of play a part in that, right? We have our kitchen display screens that are showing orders for all the, baristas and stuff like that. And maybe there's a way that that communicates with different automatic brewing machines that can spit out like orders without having to have, so much of a cost on labor at that point. So yeah, there's a lot of potential for us in this space.
Yeah,
Awesome.
not to cut in line too, but I think just to add, I know that Eversys has and different machines have great automation for telemetry and sending information back to operators and things like that directly from the machine. Is that something that Dripos in the future could potentially like report back exactly what the items were that were sold and what needs to be reordered and all those types of things? Or am I pushing that too far and thinking about like Back to the Future type stuff?
You're not at all. That's kind of right in line with kind of what I was hinting at, right? I mean, and that would be, the question earlier of like API, that would be an example of an API, right? Where you have data in one database that's being sent to another one, it's being received, and something is happening with that information, right? And so in that scenario, we have all of the orders, we understand the products that are being ordered and all of the modifiers that are included on all of that stuff. So as long as that information is all built out properly, then easily that's something that we can do for sure.
Awesome. Can you turn my skateboard into a hoverboard? Just
I
kidding.
mean, we have some pretty crazy talented engineers on our team, and our team is growing, which we're super excited about. So like, I think this year and next year, there's going to be a lot of really exciting things available to the industry by way of what we're producing.
Awesome. I'll check my mailbox. Okay, back to the questions. Cost of goods. Can you provide a low lift idea or two for anyone looking to positively impact or lower their cost of goods?
Yeah, I think just like understanding your vendors, right? Like having a good idea as to like what you're ordering from who, right? At a base level, we really have to have that dialed in. And then even communicating with your vendors and seeing if they have like different, order quantity breaks, or if we're ordering multiple units, is there a different break opportunity for us? Like, can we get deeper into this relationship with specific vendors? That way we can unlock some different price breaks on things, whether that's even just, a delivery fee, right? Like if we can remove $50 here and there, like there's a lot of value to be added by doing that. So exploring your vendors and seeing what else you can get out of that relationship.
I love that one. I feel like it's really easily overlooked of just asking for help. If I do hit the benchmarks for costs and labor, do you have an expected EBITDA to income percent?
I'm not an accountant. I
We just
don't really want to
our
speak.
our CFO just left actually, the CFO that was in the call.
We should have had that. We should have kept him on for a second.
Yeah.
No, I think I was doing some reading. I think, I don't want to speak out of pocket on this. But a lot of it comes down, I mean, there's other variables to take into consideration, right? Your like your rent and your overhead fixed costs, what kind of machines you're running. Do those machines take maintenance? How frequently are they taking maintenance? Like those are a lot of things that some of them are fixed, and some of them you just have to have a rainy day fund for. So I don't really want to like give an answer to this because I don't have a perfect data point on that, but I'm happy to follow up. I can do a little bit more research, and it looks like Derek, you asked that question, so I'm happy to follow up with you on that.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to the next question from Lori. Where do you add in rent, utilities, et cetera? I mean, these are, expenses. Some are fixed, some are variable that are in your P&L. But
Yeah.
just curious, does Dripos have that availability of like, I mean, you're talking about live data, and these aren't usually live datas, but
Yeah. The cool thing is that we are building out this accounting functionality. So we have, I would say like 70 to 80% of our customers are currently using like QuickBooks as an accounting solution. We did a poll and we got a really positive rate back on who would be open to leaving QuickBooks for a tool that we would offer. So we've been building this functionality within Dripos probably for the last 2 months. We're expecting to kind of roll it out into beta mid-February and hopefully having that fully available to our user base by the end of Q1. Now this is going to be like a full QuickBooks replacement for our operators. The ability, we have like that Plaid integration set up where you'd be able to sync all of your cards up so you can categorize your expenses. So you would be able to kind of like batch in like your fixed costs with rent and utilities and things of that nature, to give you a better understanding on like where the business as a whole, outside of just understanding the sales data. So in that scenario, you really wouldn't be doing like a journal entry of the sales summary going into your accounting software, because it would all be within Dripos. So it would be happening like within the system.
these are all segueing so well. Can you connect multiple sites? And how would you then integrate the rent for each space? The rent can be another make or break it.
Multiple sites.
Like if you have
I'm assuming that's like
multiple
multiple
cafes.
locations.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, we work with businesses that have anywhere between 1 and like 20 locations. So as far as like the online ordering question is concerned, oh no, this is not about that. This is rent for each space. Yeah, that would be, I mean, like you can run an accounting visual, like a P&L on like a location basis or on a company basis. So you can understand like how a specific location is doing versus how the business as a whole is doing. And obviously that's super important to do, to better understanding like, okay, is this location working for me or not? And why is it not working? Drilling in on those numbers is really important to do.
Awesome. Oh no, I think I'm missing. Oh no, we're good. Do you have benchmarks for rent, utilities, et cetera, that you recommend?
I don't. I didn't prepare for that. But
That's okay.
Derek,
Probably really, really heavily
Derek, there's a good
depends.
chance for you and me to connect, it sounds like.
And it obviously heavily depends on your locations, right? Like if I'm in
I mean,
Manhattan versus if I'm
yeah.
in, South Dakota.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think he was looking for like a percentage, which you might be
Oh,
able
I
to,
see.
I could probably pull something that would make sense. So yeah, Derek, I'm happy to, or for anyone else that would like to learn more about that, I'm happy to continue the conversation.
I'm just going to squeeze in one more question, but I want to say I'm going to put a survey in the chat, and I would love if you all took the time to take the survey. It just helps us understand what to keep. This is only our second webinar. We want to keep doing this. We want to know how we're doing, and we also want to know like what you want to hear about as we plan out our events for the year. So I'm going to throw that in the chat after I ask this question. Do COGS benchmarks change if I'm roasting my own coffee?
Honestly, from what I know, is that your cost should honestly go down. There's a lot more work that goes into it. But if you're importing and you're roasting, it can tend to be a little bit more affordable than actually like buying finished good and then reselling that finished good. So it really depends, but from the people I've like spoken to at length about this, is it sounds like there's more opportunity to drive that margin if you are roasting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then you explore
Vertical
opportunities of
integration.
wholesale and things like that your business would now have access to.
Right. And is it to some degree, is it just a shift from COGS into labor at that point, right? Because now you just are bringing in more labor, et cetera, et cetera. But Vertical integration is always like an interesting thing to strive for if that's what your business proposition is. But so we're right at time right now, and I wanted to thank you guys so much for being active participants in this. The chats blew up about EBITDA and COGS, and like this is what the Coffee MBA is here for. We love that type of conversation. Niko, you're a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And I would encourage all of you guys to reach out to Niko and his team to talk more about this. One of the best ways that we're going to make our coffee industry sustainable is if we can stay profitable and we know our numbers and we know our business. So that's one of the core principles of the Coffee MBA is just to make sure everyone is successful, sustainable, and profitable. So thanks again, you guys. I hope to see you on the next webinar. We also have some super big surprises coming out in our next newsletter. There may or may not be something called the Coffee MBA podcast. Please forgive us. It's our first stab at it. Anyway, Niko, big round of applause. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, you guys. Take care.
Thanks all.